Hi, everyone. We are about to get started. Thank you for your patience and welcome to our first ever Cinco de Mayo virtual chocolate tasting experience. We hope that you all had an easy time getting into our Zoom party room. We do apologize again for the slight delay. I'm Lisa Vanderson. I am the marketing and PR manager here at Ethel M Chocolates. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think, as we know, it's Cinco de Mayo and our worlds have been turned upside down with this pandemic. And I think if you would have asked any of us a year ago what we'd be doing on Cinco de Mayo 2020, none of us would have thought this was it. But we do appreciate that you are all taking good care of yourselves and staying home and practicing social distancing and honoring us to come into your homes tonight and provide a little bit of levity on what's traditionally a pretty fun and festive holiday. So thank you for that. We're super excited. There are over 200 of you on the Zoom party room right now. And from the poll, if you saw, it looks like the majority of you are coming in from the Southwest and just barely beating the Midwest though. So thank you and a big hats off to all of our friends all across the country for joining us again tonight. A couple of things I do want to just say too. If you've been to our tasting room in Las Vegas and you've done our experience, or if you've been to our tasting room in Glendale, California and done it, you know what a treat you're in for tonight. There's only one major difference, and that is just like you, we are practicing social distancing. So I'm at my home in Las Vegas, our chocolatier is at his home in Las Vegas, and our chief tech maestro is at his home in Las Vegas. And the three of us are running this Zoom party room. So if something should go awry, please just have a little bit of patience with us as the three of us work to figure this out. Couple of housekeeping notes here on the screen. You probably already read them, but I do just want to cover those. We love questions and we love comments. We're just not in person to take those from you. But what we would ask is if you can use the Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screen and submit those. I will be working as fast as I can to answer any of those in real time, or possibly wait till the end when Mark is finished and we can cover those live with him. Please note we will not be able to monitor the raise hand or chat functionality just because there are so many of you and just a few of us, we just can't handle the pure volume of all that. Another point I want to bring up is we so wish we could see you, but we can't. We know you can see us and you can hear us, but we have turned off your audio and your video only because we want to ensure that this experience for everyone is as seamless and quiet and enjoyable as possible. So no dogs barking, no children crying, nothing like that. But we do know that many of you share on social media. And if you are doing that tonight, we would love for you to show us what you're doing and how you're having fun. Just by giving us an @EthelMChocolates mention or a hashtag #EthelMChocolates, and then we'll be able to see that and aggregate all those photos out on social media. And then finally, if there's a piece you fall in love with tonight or a last minute gift for Mother's Day or Father's Day that you're thinking about, please be sure to visit us at ethelm.com and receive free shipping on your next order. So with all the housekeeping aside, I wanted to just go ahead and take you on a brief journey of who we are here at Ethel M and how we came to be. So we were founded in 1981 by Forrest Mars Sr. And you can see a portrait of Forrest in the upper left-hand corner. Upon retiring from the M&M Mars Candy Company that he had built with his father, Frank, Forrest was said to have wanted to move west for a better climate, which who can blame him? So he moved to the outskirts of Las Vegas, which is technically Henderson, Nevada, and bought some land and opened up what is now our store and our factory. And back in the day, he even had an apartment on top of the factory because he was so passionate about bringing the chocolates to life that he and his mother Ethel had created when he was a child in Tacoma, Washington. So you can see the photo in the center, that is our store today. And still many of the recipes that we make in our factory are those original recipes that Forrest and his mother made back in Tacoma. The other really interesting thing that you all know if you've been here is that Forrest was an avid gardener, and we have proof of that. We are blessed to have a 3-acre cactus garden right outside of our doorsteps, and it is just gorgeous. There's a picture in the upper right-hand corner where you can see everything in bloom, and it's pretty true to life here right now because it's springtime and everything is flowering. Cactus only flower once a year, and now is the time. So it's just a divine sight, and we're so lucky to have it here. We always keep our cactus garden free and open to the public. So if you're ever out in the area and want to stop by and see our over 300 species of native plants to the southwest, please stop by. I will also tell you though, if you're out here at the holiday time, in the lower left-hand corner is a photo of how we decorate for the holidays. So we're going on, I believe, 27 years of doing this, where we take over 1 million LED holiday lights and we decorate the garden and transform it into this magical winter wonderland. And as you can see here, those are a couple of yuccas and some palm trees and cacti that are all decked out for the holidays. And it's become a really special tradition, not only for locals, but for tourists alike. A little bit of fun fact for you all is that this has become so popular. If you're familiar with the show Tanked on the Animal Planet, they actually love our garden so much that they came out last winter and built us a custom aquarium for the garden and filmed their show here. So like I said, it's becoming quite well known throughout and people are flocking to see it. And then the last point I want to bring up is sustainability. That bottom middle picture, it is just a critical, key, important part for all of us here at FLM Chocolates. We believe that the world we want tomorrow starts with the business that we're building today. So we are proud to let you know that we have a 4-acre solar garden right outside of our door that obviously soaks up a lot of sun, given how much sunlight we have out here, and produces enough energy to power our factory during peak production hours. So you can also not only feel good about eating a chocolate that's delicious and recipes passed down from generations, but also a chocolate that's doing good for the environment. So with that, I'm the only thing standing between you and Mark and starting to taste your chocolates. Brief introduction, Mark Mackey will be your chocolatier for the night. He is our chief chocolatier. He also does a lot of product development work for us here. He comes to us with a degree from the Culinary Institute of America in New York. And most impressive, I think, is that he holds US and international patents for his work on improvements to the texture and shelf life of chocolates. Not a lot of people can say that. So sit back, relax, have fun, and enjoy your chocolates.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully everybody can see me all right. I'd like to welcome you all back to our second chocolate tasting. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, I'm really, really excited to be with you all tonight and taste some delicious chocolates, as well as actually talk a little bit about how they're processed and how we get the delicious chocolate that you see in front of you from this right here. All right. So all real chocolate starts out from a cocoa bean and a cocoa pod, just like I have here. Cocoa is a really unique fruit in that it only grows about 20 degrees north and south of the equator. Our delicious FLM chocolates are made from a blend of very specialty cocoa beans, which come from growing regions in Ecuador, Brazil, and West Africa. So actually, if you think about cocoa as being a fruit, you know, cocoa grows on trees, just like you see in the photo in front of you. And what's really unique about cocoa is that it grows not just on the branches of the trees, but actually on the trunk as well, which is really pretty cool. And, you know, the farmers, when they're growing cocoa, every variety of cocoa can have a different appearance when it's ripe and ready to be harvested. So whereas this sample I have here is a beautiful hue of got some red, some green, some yellow in there. Gorgeous. A different varietal may exhibit different colors, you know, when it's ripe and ready to be harvested. And when it's ready to be harvested, that has to all be done by hand using a very advanced method of technology called a machete. And actually, a lot of the original, like the initial cocoa growing and harvesting all of that is done by hand, which is really pretty incredible when you think about all the chocolate that's out there in the world. Now, when the cocoa is ready to be harvested, as I said, the farmer is going to cut that off of the tree with a machete. This is actually a real cocoa pod that I had flown in from Ecuador. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this open for you guys all right now. All right, so you can see here, very thick skin on that pod. And then look at this. This is delicious. Just pull these out of here. Right here, these are the delicious cocoa beans that you see right there. But if you think to yourself, these really don't look a lot like cocoa beans, right? Or they don't look a lot like chocolate, I guess I should say. And you know, they're covered by this, here I've got some in a bowl. They're covered by this kind of white pulp that covers each of the beans. And that serves a really, really important purpose. You know, so really in cocoa processing, there are two major components to developing all of the beautiful and delicious flavors and nuances that we taste. The first is fermentation, and the second is roasting. And this first process is fermentation. So it's going to take about 5 days. And all of this pulp that's here, it's actually pretty sweet. It's a little sweet and acidic. It's got a flavor kind of like lychee and pineapple. And because of that sweetness, that's actually going to help promote an environment for fermentation to occur. And that's going to develop a lot of the really fine flavors, fruity floral nuances and aromas that we'll have in our finished chocolate. So if you see here, this farmer on the third photo, they're actually, those beans have been fermenting for a few days. You can see they've moved from changing, or moved from this white color to kind of a brown color. They're kind of oxidizing a little bit, fermenting. During that process, we'll see temperatures up to about 110, 120 degrees Fahrenheit to develop those flavors, which is really, really important. And then after the fermentation is complete, we're going to dry everything out. We're going to use, you know, the sun, the natural resource, to actually dry all those beans. We don't want to develop any mold or anything on the beans, so we want to dry all that surface moisture out. And then that's really, you know, when we're going to be acquiring the beans in our roasting facility in the United States. We will actually roast all of our cocoa beans to a very specific specification. So very similar to how coffee beans are roasted to different levels of roast. You have a light, medium, and dark roast. We're actually going to do the same thing with our cocoa. There's actually a lot of similarities to coffee roasting and cocoa roasting. You can see here a photo, kind of scooping in some of those beans. We're going to roast them. You know, when we're making a darker chocolate, you know, a little more complex, we may roast those beans a little darker at a little higher temperature, a longer period of time to develop those flavors. Whereas if we're looking for something a little more mild, maybe a milk chocolate or a white chocolate, we're potentially going to roast those beans for less. And that roasting process, as well as fermentation, helps to drive out some of the more acidic notes that can be found in cocoa beans. So as I said, fermentation and roast, those are the two critical drivers of flavor in the finished chocolate. And next, after we've roasted our beans, here I've got some roasted beans for you to see right there. They look kind of not quite as dark as coffee beans, but sort of similar. You'll see here, there's a skin or a shell on the outside of that cocoa bean, right? So we don't actually want that. It doesn't serve any culinary purpose for us. So we're gonna take that off. And what's left here, this will actually break up really easily. This is called the cocoa nib. And here I've got a bowl of them here. This is essentially 100% unsweetened chocolate. I like to refer to them as like little chocolate sprinkles. You can add them like in a salad. You know, they can add a great textural component to a lot of savory dishes and a lot of things at home. But we use them obviously to make chocolate. And you know, these beans or these nibs here are about 50% fat. And because of that, when you grind them, you're going to liquefy that fat and it's going to turn into a liquid. So we take these nibs here, we grind them, and we have what's called 100% unsweetened chocolate or chocolate liquor. So there's actually no alcohol in the recipe. It's an industry term that we use, but it's at this point that we will add in our other ingredients. So things like sugar, milk powder, vanilla, other flavors. You know, we want to get everything kind of mixed together and ground together so that everything comes down in particle size and, you know, turns into that silky smooth mouthfeel that you appreciate when you have delicious chocolate. So we have that all kind of grinding together. You know, that can take several hours actually to get everything down to that silky smooth profile. And then after that, you know, we have to do something called temper the chocolate. So tempering is kind of a unique process. The chocolate itself is you know, has cocoa butter in there. That's the fat part of the chocolate. And the cocoa butter needs to be tempered in such a way that we're going to heat it and cool it under a very specific temperature curve and for a very specific amount of time to develop very stable crystals in that chocolate, so that when it sets up, it will have all of the beautiful characteristics that you associate with premium chocolate. See that beautiful gloss and sheen there? If the chocolate's not tempered, you'll actually have a little bit of haziness on top. You may have seen in the past, like if you've ever let some chocolate sit in your car and it got a little too hot, maybe melted and then re-solidified, you might notice that little haze on the top of the chocolate. That's actually cocoa butter that's kind of risen through because that's become detempered, and that's actually what you're feeling and seeing on the outside of the chocolate. So we need to do a very, you know, be very, very careful and very strict with how we treat our chocolate to temper it very well so that it actually will have all of these beautiful characteristics. All right, and then after the chocolate's tempered, at this point, we can either enrobe, which is what you see in the photo here. We have some beautiful caramels and toffees going through our little chocolate waterfall there on a conveyor belt. We can also mold. We have some chocolate molds. A couple of the pieces that we're tasting tonight have been molded, so we'll talk about those. But basically, just like it sounds, we're taking the chocolate in the center and depositing it into the mold, letting it set up, and then we're demolding and enjoying those chocolates. All right. So during our tasting tonight, you know, we're going to be doing more than just eating chocolate. I mean, eating chocolate is great, don't get me wrong, but we want to use all of our senses. We want to, you know, look at the piece with our eyes, touch it with our hands, get the aroma, the flavor, the textures, all of that. And that's really going to help us have a really unique experience with all of the different senses. Now, at this point, what I'd like to do is, if you have your placemats, if you look down at this portion of the placemat, you'll see here a chocolate wheel. This is actually a flavor wheel that kind of incorporates all of the different aromas and the flavors that we can find in chocolate. And if you look at that, you'll say, okay, great, I've got some things I recognize here, maybe some cocoa, obviously, espresso, you know, some fruity notes, nutty notes, maybe floral. Then you look over in the earthy category and you say, oh, that looks a little different. Like, I don't know that I want my chocolate to taste like leather or tobacco or mushroom. And, you know, it may sound that way initially, but actually, you know, those can be background notes or kind of contributing or complementary flavors that, while you don't necessarily want your chocolate to have a primary flavor of mushroom, maybe, that may be something that helps to elevate some other flavors. And we may taste a few of those tonight in a few of the later pieces. All right, so we have our placemats here. So I like to use them to kind of capture my notes with some of the pens that we've provided, you know, but feel free to take notes, kind of capture some comments and things that you can refer back to. And don't worry about, you know, if you're tasting something or smelling something that's a little different than what I say. Everybody's tastes are different and smells are different, and that's what makes us all unique. And you know, so don't be surprised if you may pick up on something different from your family member or your friend next to you. All right. And during our tasting tonight, you know, during our factory store, we do offer the optional pairing of a wine. And tonight, I've selected this is a Phyla Pinot Noir from the Russian River Valley in California. It's one of my favorite vineyards, but you know, really with most milk and dark chocolates, any juicy red wine, something like a Pinot Noir or potentially a Sangiovese as well, those all tend to work really nicely. You don't want to get too heavy, you know, Cabernets can sometimes be a little too tannic, a little bitter. And if you're tasting a dark chocolate piece, that can sometimes interfere, and you know, you'll have bitter on bitter, and it may not be the best experience. So I like to do something a little bit more juicy and jammy, fruity, to kind of pair with those notes in the chocolate. So I've got a little wine here, and while I have my wine glass, I did hear that we have a birthday or two and also an anniversary. So cheers to you guys, and let's get into it. Let's taste some chocolate. All right, our first piece, and actually before we get started, let me just talk a little bit about this box that our delicious chocolates came in. This is our new cactus box. This is really, really exciting. And you guys are getting a sneak peek at our new packaging that's going to be coming out a little bit later this year. But I'm really excited about this. It is one of the coolest things that I've had the opportunity to work on recently. And it's a beautiful box. You can see, you know, the beautiful cactus there is kind of a nod to our heritage in Henderson and Las Vegas, Nevada. You know, one of the great things about this as well is that it's reusable. You know, you can use it to store greeting cards, you know, the trays inside. If your kids like to paint or you like to paint, you can use those to kind of mix paint into if you're doing something, or, you know, store some desk items, things like that. So they're great boxes that can be recycled and reused as well. All right, let's get started with our first piece here. Everybody pick up your solid milk chocolate heart. And I'm going to take a sip of water in between each of the pieces to try to kind of cleanse my palate a little bit. So feel free to do the same, or if you have some wine, that's fine as well. Let's pick up this piece. So first, what we're going to notice is that beautiful kind of glossiness that I talked about earlier, you know, that's coming from that really nicely tempered milk chocolate there. You know, something unique about this chocolate is that we use a process called crumb chocolate to make this. So it's kind of like a caramelization of the milk powders and some of the sugars in this. So you actually get a little bit of that caramel coming through. And we'll smell that and taste that in a second. So lift it up. What I like to do is kind of smell it a little bit. It should pick up obviously some chocolate aromas, maybe a little bit of cooked milk, and some of that caramel, maybe if a little vanilla as well. Sometimes I like to kind of rub the side of the piece a little bit. That's going to slightly melt it and kind of activate or release some of those aromas and those aromatic compounds. Go ahead and take a bite and listen to that snap. That's really, really important in premium chocolate and well-tempered chocolate. If you have chocolate that's not very well-tempered, you're not going to have that snap. That's something you want to always hear for. Take a few bites. And then use your tongue and kind of press it up against the roof of your mouth to start that melting process. You should notice the very silky smooth milk chocolate, roasted cocoa notes, some of that, maybe some cooked milk, or we call it cooked milk, but kind of like scalded milk, like if you're heating up hot chocolate on the stove. Some of those caramels coming through, that caramel note, maybe butterscotch, vanilla. The aftertaste should be just a little sweet with maybe a little bit of that caramelized sugar and milk that we're tasting from the crumb process of making the chocolate. I'm going to go ahead and take a sip of wine. When you're drinking some wine, you know, I like to slurp a little bit. It actually helps to aerate the wine in your mouth and bring a little more of those aromatics and flavors, make them a little more pronounced. So don't hesitate to make maybe a little noise while you're drinking wine. And just, if you're doing that, you know, think about how the wine is kind of changing the chocolate flavor as well, adding some of those, as I said, those fruity and jammy notes, maybe a little bit of sweetness and bitterness, depending on the wine that you're trying. All right. So if you haven't already, take a sip of water or wine if you have it. And then we will move on to our second piece. This is one of my personal, actually, one of my favorite milk chocolate pieces, and actually my favorite pairing as well. And this is our milk chocolate peanut butter piece right here. So as you can see, it's in a mold in the shape of a peanut. All right, you can see that beautiful gloss on the peanut there. Now, when we go to lift this up to our nose, you should right away smell that peanut butter. Really nice. You can warm the side a little bit if you'd like, but that peanut really comes through. And the reason for that is because, we make our peanut butter fresh at FLM. We grind it fresh every day that we're making this piece. We don't use any store-bought peanut butter. We get our peanuts in fresh roasted. We grind them up, and then we mix in just a little bit of salt and a little bit of sugar. Helps to bring out some of those aromatics and kind of round out some of the flavors, and that's it. And really, that's all this piece is. You have that delicious peanut butter in the center, and then our creamy FLM milk chocolate. So you should pick up, again, some of those peanut notes coming through, maybe a little bit of the chocolate and the dairy as well. Let's take a bite. And right away, just that intense peanut flavor just kind of overtakes everything. Really, really nice. You can tell how fresh that peanut butter is. And then kind of press it up against the roof of your mouth, and that chocolate's going to melt really nicely. And sort of kind of cut some of that peanut butter flavor with it, add a little bit of creaminess, some cocoa. Caramel coming through a little bit, vanilla. And here's where you may taste a little bit of earthiness, maybe a little wood coming in. There's no wood in the recipe, but sometimes when you roast the peanuts, you might develop just a little toastiness or a little woodiness that comes through in that. So that's another nice note that I like about the piece. And then if you are trying the wine, take another sip. This is one of my favorites. And think about, for those of you that like peanut butter and jelly, you've got a fruit forward, kind of a juicy red wine, something kind of like maybe red fruit, raspberry, and then the peanut butter. So it's kind of like a little bit of a peanut butter and jelly mixture or flavor. It's pretty nice. It adds a little bit of richness to that. All right, if you'd like to capture any notes that you were discussing with maybe your friends and family on that piece, go ahead and take those. And think about the last two pieces. Those were the first, the milk chocolate pieces. So think about the way those melted in your mouth and kind of how long it took to melt. And then as we move over into now our dark chocolates, think about, kind of compare those two. And you should notice the dark chocolate pieces will melt a little slower than the milk chocolate. And that's because typically with dark chocolates, we have more cocoa solids. And so that's gonna, make it a little slower to melt in our mouth. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We're gonna cross over to our dark chocolate heart here. Again, look at that beautiful shine that you can see, that beautifully tempered dark chocolate. Lift it up to our nose and should obviously, immediately notice quite a difference. A much deeper, darker roasted cocoa flavor, some toasty notes coming through, maybe like some coffee, a little espresso. And I should note, basically, from our last tasting that we had, a few of you wrote in with some feedback and wanted to see our solid dark and milk chocolate pieces. So we were really happy to be able to include those in the tasting tonight to kind of give you a base or a foundation of our chocolate. Go ahead and take a bite. Again, that snap, very important. Take a few bites. Press up against the roof of your mouth. And right away, get those darker cocoa, darker roasted notes kind of coming through. Vanilla, toasted, maybe coffee, espresso. A little bit of bitterness coming from those, the additional cocoa solids that are in this. So this dark chocolate is about 56% cacao. Our milk chocolate's about 44 to 45%, somewhere in that range. So this is a great, it's not too bitter, and then not too sweet as well. It's a really nice dark chocolate that works very, very well for all of our pieces at FLM. Now, some of you may pick up on, in the background, maybe a little bit of what we call a citrus blossom flavor, or maybe a little bit of orange. That's something we add a little bit of that actually to our chocolate, and it helps to bring out some of those other fruity and floral notes in the chocolate that we create during the roasting and the fermentation process. It's really quite nice. I really like it. And something else to note, as we taste these dark chocolate pieces, you'll notice that, 20 minutes, maybe up to 25, 30 minutes after you finish the piece, you're actually still gonna taste that in your mouth, which is really cool, because it's almost like getting like a second taste of the chocolate. And, it's because of those, the way that we treat our chocolate is we treat it really, really well and process it with a lot of care. And, we maintain a lot of those really nice flavors in the dark chocolate. And so they will continue to actually stay with you for quite some time. It's actually quite nice. All right. Capture your last few notes, if you'd like, on the dark chocolate solid heart. And then we will move on to our dark chocolate coconut delight here. So with this piece, we take coconut and we steam it in our kitchen, in our factory in Henderson, and we'll mix in some sugars, some salt, and again, we'll steam everything together to bring out, it's gonna hydrate all of those ingredients and then bring out all of the aromatics and the beautiful floral notes of the coconut and really just heighten all of that. And then we're gonna take that coconut and we're gonna actually extrude it into kind of a round shape that you see here. And then we're going to put it on that same conveyor belt, on that chocolate waterfall, and it's going to get drenched in delicious FLM dark chocolate, and then finished with just a little drizzle of dark. It's going to provide a little bit more texture in our mouth before the piece melts. This is one of our signature pieces, one of our classic 16 recipes as well. Let's go ahead and bring it up to our nose. You should notice a little bit of a difference. If you still got a little bit of your solid heart, you can smell that one and kind of compare if you'd like. If you don't, no, it's okay. You might notice a little difference, some of those floral notes coming through from the coconut. Dark chocolate's a pretty complex ingredient, and so a lot of times it'll cover up the aromas of what is inside. So that's okay, but sometimes you can taste or smell those coming through. All right, let's take a bite. Look at that nice white coconut. Really nice and chewy. Kind of press up against the roof of your mouth again. And then dark chocolate's going to start to melt and kind of cut that sweetness really nicely. Should be tasting some, again, those espresso notes, the coffee notes potentially from the roasted cocoa. Some of the almost like perfuminess coming from that coconut, maybe a little vanilla as well. And the aftertaste, just a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of that floralness, that perfumey from the coconut, and then some of the slight bitterness from the dark chocolate. That's actually really nice as well. Kind of cuts that sweetness again. All right. Capture your last few notes on that piece. And now we're moving on to one of our newer FLM chocolate pieces. This is actually our most labor-intensive piece that we make at FLM. And you can kind of tell that. You've got some beautiful cocoa butter brush strokes on there. You know, those are actually hand brushed by our skilled chocolatiers at FLM. And this is our dark chocolate XO cognac truffle. So to make this, I said this is basically our most labor-intensive piece to make. And we start with this piece. We start with a traditional ganache, which is a blend of chocolate and cream. So we kind of mix those together. We create a beautiful emulsification of those two ingredients. And then we pour in a little bit of Remy Martin XO cognac. So an ultra premium cognac that is aged for 30 years, 30 years in French oak casks. And so when we taste it in a second, you might pick up on some of those woody notes, maybe some leather notes, tobacco notes kind of coming through that will be kind of from that wood that the cognac was aged in. So to make this, that's just for the ganache. We've made our ganache. And then we actually, for this piece, we do something called shell molding. And what that is, it's a more of a labor-intensive process and allows us to get a beautiful and a super, super thin, almost paper thin shell of chocolate on there, because we really want to showcase that beautiful cognac ganache center. And so we will actually make the shells, and then we will make the ganache, put the ganache into the shells, and then cap them with chocolate. And again, it's a three-step process. It takes a significant amount of time, but the end result is absolutely worth it. And I mentioned to you before, you know, our skilled chocolatiers will actually paint by hand each of the molds that these go into. So no two are exactly alike. They've been kind of hand painted with some colored cocoa butter there. And basically, you know, these pieces are about, I would say, 2 to 3 times the amount of time and resources that it would take for some of our other pieces. But the end result is delicious. Let's go ahead and pick it up and smell. Should be getting some more of those dark chocolate, maybe a little bit of black pepper coming through as well from the cognac. Take a bite. Right away, silky smooth, that dark chocolate ganache is going to start melting. Taste some of the alcohol, the warmth in the back of your throat. Chocolate, and then the dark chocolate shell and the cap are going to start to melt. Kind of balance that alcohol really nicely. You might get some woody, as I said, some woodiness, a little bit of leather, maybe a little bit of tobacco. Again, all complementary to the overall experience, not too overpowering. That smooth cognac. And even some, you know, some dried fruits or some maybe fig or raisin notes as well. Can be coming from that cognac. And the finish, just maybe a little bit of that alcohol warmth, dark chocolate, you know, that little slight bitterness, coffee, maybe some black pepper as well. And with these last two pieces, since they do contain alcohol, typically we wouldn't pair them with a wine or another alcohol. Just too much alcohol in your mouth can sometimes overpower the other flavors and nuances. And so for these two pieces, we like typically to try them just on their own. The alcohol kind of has its own pairing effect with them. This is one of my, so it's one of our newer pieces, and it's probably my favorite piece that has alcohol in it. It's really, really great. I think it's just such a great and well-rounded experience with that cognac. All right, capture the last few notes, if you would, on that piece. And our final piece of the night, we have our dark chocolate agave tequila creme liqueur. So this piece is perfect for today, perfect for Cinco de Mayo. So with this piece, we have our delicious dark chocolate, FLM dark chocolate shell. And on the inside, we have a tequila cream that we make with 100% blue agave and Yeho tequila. That it's Herradura is the name, and it's been aged for 25 months in American white oak. So we take that beautiful tequila, we'll blend that with a little bit of milk, some fondant sugar, a little bit of butter, a little bit of salt, and that'll form the center of this delicious confection. When we'll take that and we'll actually, again, so whereas before we kind of hand painted the molds with colored cocoa butter, this we actually use also done by hand. We have like an airbrush that we will spray our molds with by hand. And this one we have a really neat kind of speckled effect that looks pretty cool there. A green and a white cocoa butter that we use. But again, look, I mean, that gloss, absolutely, you know, very glossy, very shiny. And so we'll take that tequila cream and we will deposit it through a single shot depositing process. And that will put the perfect amount of dark chocolate on the outside and seal the tequila cream on the inside. So let's go ahead and smell. A little. Get a little bit of that tequila through. Take a bite. And you get the tequila, it's kind of strong. This is probably one of our stronger pieces. Tequila flavor, very pronounced. You get some of that spiciness from the tequila, a little vanilla, a little woodiness as well. And the dark chocolate's gonna melt. Kind of cut that really nicely as well, cut some of that alcohol. It's nice. It has a really nice balanced aftertaste. Some of that again, the dark chocolate, cocoa, espresso. You might taste some earthiness as well. So because the tequila is aged for 25 months in oak, you might get some of that leather, a little bit of tobacco, you know, some of those earthy notes coming through as well. You can see here, so part of the tequila making process, when they, so tequila actually is a succulent, not a cactus. And when they harvest it, it has all of these like leaves off of the side. And so they cut all the leaves off with a very special tool. And then they will roast the piña, which is kind of that bulb there. And they'll roast that and then create a lot of flavor, kind of like the fermentation process in chocolate, with a little bit of heat. And they will develop flavors in the tequila, and then they will go ahead and ferment and distill. And so after taste, again, this piece you'll actually, you know, maybe 15, 20 minutes later, you'll still be able to kind of taste that dark chocolate on your tongue, which is, as I said, I kind of like that. All right. Well, capture maybe your last final notes on that last piece. And when you have a moment, we're going to put up a poll on the screen, and go ahead and, if you would, vote for your favorite FLM piece that you tried today. We'll get a glimpse of everybody's favorite piece here. And then also, once you voted, if there are any questions that you have, go ahead and feel free to type those into the Q&A section. We're going to spend a few minutes here answering any questions you have about FLM, about chocolate making. I'll do my best to answer those for you. And if there's something I can't answer, I will absolutely get back to you with a response as soon as I can. I do see a lot of questions coming in.
Again,
all right. Looks like the cognac piece was, well, 34%. So between the peanut butter and the cognac was pretty much everybody's favorite. A few coconuts as well. Excellent.
Excellent. Hey, Mark, that was a great experience you took us on. And there are a lot of questions that have come in. I've been trying to answer as I can.
Okay.
You're really the expert here, so I'm going to read a few of these to you.
Sure.
Okay, so first and most importantly, someone's asking, can you repeat the name of the Pinot that you're drinking?
Yes, I was actually, so this is, let's see if it'll, Phyla Pinot Noir, and this is the Kiefer Ranch from Russian River Valley, California. My sisters and I took a little like brother and sister trip over to Sonoma a few months ago, actually, or fall of last year, and we stopped at this winery, and I fell in love with the red wine and thought it would make a great pairing with our delicious chocolates. So it has all of those attributes, those jammy, kind of fruity, floral notes, or fruity, juicy notes that you would look for in a wine that you want to pair with delicious chocolate. Quite a few Pinots. They're all very, very good. So you really can't go wrong with any of their Pinots. The last tasting, we had a complicated Pinot Noir. That's actually one of the Pinots that we offer in our tasting at our factory store. So that's also a great combination as well. But I thought tonight we might do something a little different and give folks another opportunity to try delicious wine.
Awesome. Okay, another question about one of my favorite pieces, the coconut piece.
Yes.
Asking, what is it exactly that we use for the coconut? Because they liked that it wasn't too strong.
So it's a partially dried coconut. And the reason for that is when we get it in, like we want to be able to control the amount of moisture that we're adding to our coconut, because when it goes into the center of a chocolate, you know, you've got to be very careful with something called the water activity. It's basically, you know, the amount of free moisture, available moisture in your center, you know, so that it's a stable product. And so we will actually add the moisture in at FLM, again, to kind of similar to how you may, you know, toast, you know, spices before you use them, or toast things to kind of, maybe nuts to kind of bring out some of those aromas. We actually do a steaming process in our kitchen to bring out those floral notes in the coconut. So that's something that we do, and we think it works really well. It pairs really well. It's really nicely balanced with the chocolate.
Great, thank you. For the cognac truffle piece, there's a question about how the painting is done. We know it's cocoa butter. It's not real paint, obviously.
Yes.
But is the painting put in the mold first, or is it put on the piece once it comes out of the mold?
Yeah, so the colored cocoa butter is actually applied to the mold before there's any chocolate in it, and it's painted on with food grade paint brushes. So they'll actually sit and they'll paint that cocoa butter right into each cavity, and then that will. So we have to actually treat that kind of the same way that we do chocolate. We have to temper it because it is coming. It's cocoa butter that we're coloring, and so that's got to sit and kind of cool, and then we will deposit the chocolate shell in that mold. And something about, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but shell molding, you know, it is more of a labor-intensive process, and that's because it's 3 steps. So we literally will flood that mold with chocolate, and then we'll flip it upside down, and all that chocolate's going to come out of the mold, or most of the chocolate, and we'll scrape it. So what we're left with on the inside is just the chocolate that's just kind of stuck in that mold in a very nicely thin, paper thin layer. And that's what we're going to use as the base to put our cognac center in. And then we'll cap the top off with a little more dark chocolate. And that's basically it.
Great, thank you. A lot of questions coming in about the tequila. I guess it's a relevant topic tonight.
Yes.
Can you everyone the brand name of it and how we're using that?
Yes, so it's Herradura, Herradura, and it's an añejo tequila, which is in the middle. You have, I believe, reposado, añejo, and then, no, I'm gonna have that backwards. But it's in the middle. There's, I think, no, Blanco, I believe, is the one. That's basically not cured, not aged. That's just white. This one has a little bit of an amber hint to it. And I believe actually Reposado, that's the one that's aged longer. It's a darker. So this is the one that's in the middle. But it's Herradura Añejo Tequila, and it's 100% blue agave.
Great. Okay, Mark, let's see. The next one is, well, there's a lot of questions actually about when will we do this again. So I'm personally excited to see that you're all—
Tomorrow night, no.
Yeah. We are absolutely planning to do a couple more of these in May because, as we talked about in the beginning, we're all stuck at home right now. So stay tuned. Excuse me, stay tuned. I would ask you to watch our social media. If you're not following us, please do so because we'll announce it there as well as put updates on our website. Let's see.
And hopefully everybody liked, I thought it'd be neat for tonight to share the real, like the fresh cocoa pod. You know, it's something that not a lot of people actually get a chance to see. And, you know, that whole process is kind of unique itself, and how we get that delicious chocolate from something that doesn't really resemble chocolate at all. And I thought that was kind of cool. Hopefully you all enjoyed that as well.
Excellent. So Mark, another question. Someone's asking about white chocolate, and can you explain how that color is derived?
Yes, thank you very much. So great question. I spoke to it a little bit earlier, but I didn't really provide a lot of background. So white chocolate is a chocolate. So there is what we call a standard of identity for that chocolate. But basically what we do is we take, remember we went back and we ground the cocoa nibs here into that 100% unsweetened chocolate liquor. At that point, we're going to take that, and under a lot of pressure, we will separate the cocoa solids or the cocoa powder from that liquor, and what we'll be left with is the cocoa butter. And we will only use the cocoa butter to make white chocolate. So that's why it has that, it's not quite white, it almost has a little yellowness to it, you know, a little yellow tint. And that's because we use just the cocoa butter to make that chocolate. So we'll add some milk in there, you know, some sugar, vanilla, basically. And so that's why typically it's a little sweeter than milk chocolate would be. You know, but I think it provides a really nice balance, you know, for certain pieces, and gives a nice creaminess and almost like a butteriness to those chocolate pieces. So
great. Also, a lot of questions coming in right now about if we do this again, will they be the same pieces? And that is not our intention. We're trying to come up with a calendar that lets all of you continue to come back and see us again with different pieces. So there might be like a milk chocolate lovers tasting and a dark chocolate lovers and a fruity session. So stay tuned as we work through that. And like I said, we'll do all that on our social media and on our website.
Yeah, give us, if you would like for us to feature anything specific, go ahead and call that out, and we'll try to do that. Yeah, if you weren't able to join us for our first tasting, we actually tasted different pieces. We had our milk chocolate sea salt caramel, milk chocolate raspberry satin cream, milk chocolate pecan caramel rapture, our milk chocolate ABK, or ABK we call it, almond butter crisp, and then our dark chocolate lemon satin cream, which is another top selling piece. So yeah, we would like to get through all of them, but there are specific ones that you would like to try. Send those over to us and we'll try to feature them in the next tasting.
Great. Mark, another question, where do we get the majority of our cocoa beans?
So most, I would say in the world, you know, about 70% comes from West Africa. But our FLM beans, they're a blend. So they're specialty beans, you know, they're typically different levels of of beans that you can get. And we buy very specific specialty beans from Ecuador, Brazil, and West Africa. And the thing is with that, you've got different types of cocoa. So the pod that I opened up tonight, that was from Ecuador. That was the Nacional varietal, but you've got other varietals. Trinitario is another one. You've got some hybrids out there, and each one provides a little bit of a different fruity or floral or different nuance. You know, kind of like how grapes grown in different regions will have different attributes to them, like, you know, based on what they call the terroir, the environment, the soil, that kind of thing. The same thing with cocoa. So, you know, we use a blend of beans to really give us, you know, those different flavors that we are looking for in each of those specific categories.
Okay, great. Let's see, there are some questions about the dark, and I know, you know, we all have personal opinions about how much of a percentage of cacao we want in that, but can you explain the reasoning, Mark, behind not having 70% plus in our chocolate?
So what we found, I mean, for our chocolates, you know, we like the range there, the percent of cacao that we have, and you have to be careful, because in the industry, like when you see bars that have 70% cacao, 65%, you know, yes, typically, general rule of thumb, the higher the percentage, the more bitter it will taste. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to have, you know, more of like the healthy components or more things that you're necessarily looking for. And that's because, you know, basically anything that comes from the cocoa pod can be considered cacao. And so, you know, you could add more cocoa butter to your recipe and still call it potentially a higher percentage cacao than you might be accustomed to. And so, you know, for us, really, it's not just the cacao, but it's really the processing of the cocoa itself and the way that we treat it and the way that we handle it that really provides a lot of that flavor and those notes and those nuances that you taste. And so for us, you know, the 56% that we have, you know, is really, we think that that's the best combination. And I should also say, you know, something that's really unique about FLM that's different than maybe some other chocolates you may have tried is that, you know, we say we're bean to box. You know, we control our cocoa beans every step of the way, from roasting. You know, we have our specific roasting profiles and recipes for our specific recipes. You know, not everybody can say that they have that same control over the process. And so that's something for me, it's very, very exciting, you know, to be able to say that. And so we can really, every step of the way, make sure that we're doing everything we can to maintain as much of those flavor attributes and nuances as possible.
Great. Okay, Mark, I think we have time for one more.
Okay.
Let's see here. This is more of a personal question. What is your all-time favorite piece and why?
Oh, well, so I'm very biased over the ones that, so I've been with the team now about a little over 4 years. I've developed quite a few pieces, but there are some that have been with the company. There's some of the classic pieces, you know, so I would say in terms, I'll have to break it off into two, but I would say our dark chocolate lemon satin cream was probably the piece that I fell in love with before I joined the FLM team. But the tart lemon blended with that bitter dark chocolate and the way that it kind of balances and kind of blends in your mouth. For those of you that joined us last time, we tasted that as the final piece, but it's great. It's like a dessert in your mouth. And, you know, that's probably my favorite, I would say, you know, piece that's been with the company for some time. And then I would say probably the cognac out of the pieces that I've developed, that's probably my second favorite. It's my favorite piece that contains alcohol, but I really, really like that blend of cognac with the dark chocolate. And there are a few pieces that I can't talk about right now. We'll be launching a little later this year that may actually dethrone that piece. So we'll see, but I'm really, really excited to be able to share with you those pieces a little later this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. All right, guys. So thank you again for your time and again for letting us in your home. We will be sending out a survey. We would love your feedback, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. We're looking to improve this every time. So please let us know about that. And then if for some reason you missed something or you want to go back and watch this recording, we will be posting a link to this on our YouTube channel. And I think we'll be sending that out to you as well, so you can easily access that. So thank you, be safe, and stay tuned for our next tasting. Good night.
Bye, everybody. Have a great night.